So I want to thank very much the organizers, and particularly Professor Dattani for the kind invitation and also for the very kind introduction. So I will speak about pituitary gigantism. We know, since this study in the province of Liège realized 10 years ago, that the prevalence of pituitary adenomas is 1 in 1,000. Acromegaly is a little bit rarer, might be 1 in 5 or 6,000, and pituitary gigantism, a small proportion of these acromegalic patients, might be 5 or 6%. So it's a very rare disease. There are several causes, genetic causes of pituitary adenomas and gigantism. The McCune-Albright syndrome was described in the year 1930s. It could be familial, but actually there is no familial cases that has been shown until today. MEN1 has been described in the year 1953 by Dr. Werner, and there are cases with acromegaly and gigantism. Carnet complex the same, described in the year 1985 by Dr. Aiden Carnet. And then several others, and the most important for today is FIPA. Why? Because FIPA is the base of our work on gigantism. This could be a prefiguration of FIPA family. The brother Hugo, two giants at the beginning of the 20th century. They were called les Géants des Alpes, and they were living in Paris. They died very early, before the age of 30. And by the end of the 90s, there were several cases described with familial acromegaly, including in R series. We had 3 families with acromegalic patients. But in total, we had 15 families. But not only with familial acromegaly. There were other patients with other pituitary adenomas, like in this family, acromegaly 2 times, Cushing's disease, and prolactinoma. So we needed an explanation for this non-MEN1, non-Carnet complex, familial form of isolated pituitary adenomas that included not only acromegaly, what to call it, and we decided for FIPA. It took a time to collect 64 FIPA families and to publish that in GCNM in 2006. So we had 1 4-member family, 8 with 3 members, and 55 with 2 members. And half of them were homogeneous. That means always the same type of adenoma in the same family. And half of them were heterogeneous, like the one that I showed you a few minutes ago. And at that time, FIPA was more or less 2% of all pituitary adenomas in R series. The same month, Dr. Altunen published that AIP mutation could be culprit for formation of pituitary adenomas, several cases in the same family. And they published 3 families, 3 from Finland and 1 from Italy. So you can imagine that immediately after, we have studied our FIPA families with sequencing AIP gene. And in 2007, we had 73 FIPA families studied, and we found that 15% of these families had an AIP mutation. And we found also that patients with AIP mutation had bigger tumor and were younger than the other one. So no AIP mutation, older, smaller tumor. AIP mutation, younger, bigger tumor. Like here, there's 2 patients from Marie-Lisa Freria from Roma, 2 cousins with AIP mutation and big tumor, whereas they are only 19 and 21 years old. So we wanted to demonstrate that. And we did this big study with 36 centers, 14 countries, and we compared 75 acromegalic patients with the AIP mutation with 232 acromegalic patients without the AIP mutation. And quickly we found it was true. AIP mut, age at diagnosis 20. Control 40. Maximum tumor diameter bigger in AIP mut than in control. Excuse me. And GH at diagnosis higher in the AIP mut than in control. So these are summarized in this table, together with several other characteristics like microadenoma, extracellular extension, etc. And one thing is that in this table you can see that presence of gigantism, 32% here versus 6% here, which is normal because, look here, age at first symptoms, 17 versus 38, so much more giant here. And then, in a review, we understood that AIP could explain all phenotypes, but in 90% of the cases, they are linked to some GH secretion, prolactin secretion, or both. And in 80% of the cases, they are diagnosed before the age of 30. And this was confirmed by other authors. So, this is why we moved from FIPA to gigantism. 32% of giant in AIP+, 25 giant here. For somebody who wanted to study gigantism for a while, it was a very good opportunity. So we wanted to discover the secret of the giants. How do they grow so tall? You have here an image that is constructed with Robert Wadlow, the tallest ever, 2.72 meters, and Julius Koch, 2.59 meters. We will speak again about these two people. And a normal man here, 1.75 meters. How to study gigantism? This is a rare disorder, and even expert centers see few patients. No previous large-scale gigantism study was attempted. Are specialized tools needed? Yes, we need to study that on the world scale. This was the response. So we did a retrospective study, 47 centers, 18 countries, 200 patients. And we published that in 2015. What did we learn? A lot of things. Among them, most patients are male. Pituitary tumors are large. Treatment is difficult. Long-term symptoms burden is high. And we learned about genetics. 1/3, heavy AIP mutation. 5%, McCune-Albright syndrome. 1% Carney complex, 1% MEN1. And in 10%, a surprise. What kind of surprise? 10 patients were coming from the NIH. And during an official ceremony in Liège, where Dr. Stratakis was there, he told me, in the 10 patients that I sent you, there are 2 instances of duplication of 11 genes on chromosome X. We found that 2 years ago, but we were unable to reproduce that in other cases, and we don't know if it is pathological or not. Maybe we should collaborate. And he had also 2 other genetic abnormalities, but this one was the most important for me. And of course, I said yes. The problem with the 2 instances is not a lot. 11 genes is a lot. X chromosome never implicated in pituitary tumorigenesis. No known genes implicated in overgrowth. Duplication is not necessarily pathological. Maybe I have a duplication. And the answer came from this, traveling through the world. After our publication on FIPA, I was invited to give lecture like today in the world. And I always insisted that patients with AIP mutation had aggressive tumor, big tumor, and that the tumor was diagnosed early in the life. And always, after my conference, I had endocrinologists, but more frequently pediatricians, coming to me, Mr. Vickers, I have a young patient, 5-year-old, with a big tumor. Don't you think we should test for AIP mutation? And I always said, yes, we can do, send me DNA, we will do the AIP mutation. And in 20% of the cases, we had an EIP mutation, and we tested the family, etc. And in 80% of the cases, we put the DNA in the fridge. So coming back from this ceremony with Dr. Stratakis, I went back to the fridge, and interestingly, within 1 week, we had the confirmation of the locus, including GPR101, and within 6 weeks, we had a reduction in the number of genes, and we had a new syndrome. From 11 genes, we could reduce quickly to, finally, 4 genes. And quickly after, we published that new syndrome in the New England Journal of Medicine in December 2014, and a month later in endocrine-related cancer. We call the disease XLAC, for X-linked acrogigantism, and at the time, there were always 4 genes in the microduplication, even if we had more or less understood it was GPR101 the culprit. What was this new syndrome? You have here all giants. Here, the column with the GPR, with the microduplication on chromosome X, and here, giants without the microduplication. What do we see? Here, much more female. Age at onset, 1 year versus 16. Diagnosis 3 years versus 21. Big tumor everywhere. But here, sometimes hyperplasia or both adenoma and hyperplasia. IGF-1 level very high. Prolactin concentration very frequent, 93%. Could be familial or sporadic, whereas not there. And here you have the Belgian case, because there is one Belgian case from Dr. Lisi. And you can see how this young girl was very little at birth, very small, and how she installed herself as the pole position to become the tallest lady of the world if we do not stop her. Here, a little Siberian girl with some signs of acromegaly and the patch of acanthosis nigricans here due to the insulin resistance. Here, the young Indian coming from Professor Nalini Shah. So this is a familial case. So this is a FIPA2 example. This is the mother. She is acrogigantic. This is a young 6-year-old boy who has nothing to do with the story, except that this one is also 6-year-old, and he's taller than his father. So these 2 people have XLAG, and it's a family of XLAG. These people have always big tumor, or I would say hyperplasia, because it's more frequently hyperplasia than tumor. You can see here the pituitary, frontal view or sagittal view. This is the normal place for the pituitary, and you see here with suprasellar extension, and the same on the profile. And they have huge amount of GH. I never saw so huge amount of GH in my life, sometimes 1,000 times the normal value of GH. So big tumor or big hyperplasia, huge amount of GH in a little body. This case is thanks to Dr. Naves from Brasilia. We saw the spontaneous evolution during 4 years. At 6 years, he was 1.63 meters. At 10 years, he was close to 2 meters. He's now 2.15 meters. And the volume of the tumor increased by 4 times in 4 years. You can see here the beginning, at diagnosis, and 4 years later. It was a young patient from a favela. The pathology findings are interesting. From normal to hyperplasia, area of transformation, and then adenoma. Here, one very important thing. So staining for GH, this was expected. For prolactin, also expected because I secrete both. But this one is the most important on this slide. A strong GHRH receptor staining in the tumor or in the hyperplasia. We will come back on that. The treatment is not easy. Actually, Medications are not working very well except the pegvisomant. And the other thing that works well is the surgery. So we have merely two treatments, surgery and pegvisomant. Dopamine agonists and somatostatin analogs are not working very well in these cases. This is a nucleus of a cell of a young girl, which is studied with FISH, fluorescent in situ hybridization. You see here 2 chromosome X. And we studied 2 genes that are always included in the duplication of the 4 genes, ARGF6 and GPR101. And you see that there is 1 chromosome here with 1 copy of each, and 1 chromosome with 2 copies of each. This is the CGH, comparative genome hybridization, and you can see the length of the duplication. And these are several patients with the duplications, and you can observe that duplication, the length of the duplication is never the same from a family to another family. It's the same in the patient from the same family, but never the same from a family to another. But always the 4 genes. So, as I told you, patients not responding very well to medication, so we have to operate them. So we had to operate 2 patients, and we studied the expression of the 4 genes in the tumor. And actually 3 genes were not expressed or not overexpressed, but one of them, one of the 4 genes, GPR101, was expressed 600 times and 1,000 times in these 2 tumors. So we decided that GPR101 was the culprit for the explanation of XLAG. And 2 years later, there was a case published from Dr. Corbonit's staff, and they had 1 case with only GPR101 duplication. So this publication confirms that we were right saying GPR101 is the culprit. So what is GPR101? It's a receptor, an orphan receptor. GPR101 is highly expressed in the fetal anterior pituitary. We have shown that. GPR101 is expressed in the human and mouse hypothalamus. And GPR101 duplication causes pituitary adenomas and gigantism in XLAG. XLAG syndrome, a new neuroendocrine pathway, we will see. Come back with the young patients from Dr. Lisi. She had elevated GH prolactin, a large uniform pituitary lesion, hyperplasia, treated with medication, not efficient, poor clinical effect, referred to surgery. Before surgery, we studied GH, prolactin here, GH, and GHRH. And GHRH was high all the time, as well as GH and prolactin, but this we knew. The tissue was studied in culture in Marseille with Dr. Barlier, and you can see that with GH receptor antagonists, there was a significant inhibition of GH and of prolactin. So, pituitary hyperplasia on MRI, increased circulating GHRH levels with GH prolactin hypersecretion, pituitary GH prolactin hyperplasia and adenoma on histology, high GHRH receptor staining in tumor, no GHRH in tumor on immunohistochemistry, RNA-seq, no GHRH, massively increased GPR101, GHRH antagonist inhibits GH prolactin secretion from tumor, so we believe that there may be a hypothalamic involvement. Thereafter, I will come back on that. Thereafter, we had special cases like here. Look, there is a duplication here, but it's not so clear. Remember, in this case, it was very clear. This is the area of duplication. Here, not so clear. What is happening here? So we did another methodology with digital droplet PCR, and we studied a potential duplication of GPR101 as compared to ZIG3, which is never comprised in the duplication area. And we found that sporadic males with XLAG syndrome can have dramatic gigantism with as little as 16% of cells with GPR101 microduplication. So there are also mosaicism with this disease. And we published that. And there was one case also published from London a little bit later in GCNM with also a mosaicism. So it has been confirmed. So these two people, the tallest man ever, 2.72 meters, the tallest woman ever, 2.48 meters, are good candidates for having XLAG. And all these patients published in the scientific literature are good candidates, and one has been confirmed. I will come back. And all these historical giants might be good candidates for being XLAG2. And one has been confirmed. I will come back. So this case was published in 1989 and republished in 2016. It's another FIPA family with a lady, with a young boy. And this is the patient that has been diagnosed early in the life because he was diagnosed in utero. And as he was diagnosed in utero, he was studied at birth, and he had already high GH, prolactin, and IGF-1. And 3 weeks after the birth, he had already big hyperplasia. So it is the youngest diagnosed with the disease very early in the life. So now we have another genetic cause for gigantism. We have 1/3 AIP positive, 10% XLAG, and the other one I told you. So XLAG is the second frequent genetic cause, sporadic, FIPA, mosaic, and responsible for the tallest giant in the world. And we can compare the XLAG with AIP plus and genetically negative, this group. And what we observed is that XLAG is the winner, 5 standard deviation above the mean versus only 3 for the other one. Much more female in XLAG, 2/3 due to chromosome X. Much more male in AIP and genetically negative. Age at onset and at diagnosis much younger. They have time to become the tallest giant in the world. This is for this reason. Big tumor everywhere. So we are here with a new syndrome involving GPR101 duplication, a new gene for FIPA, new pathway for growth and growth hormone, a new mechanism at pituitary level or hypothalamus, new therapeutic perspective. And currently, we have 25 cases in our group diagnosed. The last one was sent by Dr. Rohrer, who is here. And in total, more than 30 cases in the literature. And this has modified the recommendation for genetic testing. I have no time to go through this decision tree, but you can get it here or in several reviews that we did. Come back to the tallest giant of the world, Robert Wadlow and Zheng Jilian. It's impossible to get the DNA, but this one, who was the tallest when he was alive, Jean Constantin, 2.59 meters, it's not so bad. It's the 4th ever taller giant in the world. And he came to my country in 1901, in Verviers, close to Soiron. And he died, unfortunately, when he was 30 years old in Mons, so another city at the western part of Belgium. So when I learned that he was there, I contacted the conservator of the museum, and I went there immediately with my dentist here to collect a tooth and a bone to make genetic analysis because he's a strong candidate for having XLAG, of course. He had big cella turcica, and I came back very proud to my department. It was in December, it was already dark, it was already the night, and I was here with my tooth and my bone, and the secretaries and assistants and students were there, and I was very proud showing them, do you know what it is? It's from the Jean Constantin. And there were 2 students who said, oh no, Jean Constantin is here. No, it's not there, it's in Mons, I come from there. They disappeared and come back 15 minutes later, triumphantly in my department, with the femur and the humerus of Jehan Constantin, and you can see here femur, humerus of Jehan Constantin, Dr. Delaunoy and Dufresne, who are the physicians who did the autopsy, so I was very much perturbed. Because look, there are two femurs. So a giant with three femurs, like Trinacria, symbol attributed by Homer to Sicilia. Then I did, like expert in art, I did a radiography immediately, the same day. And there was a copy, of course. And the professor of pathology did not know it was a copy. He believed he had the femur of Jehan Constantin. But the goal was to study DNA. And so we studied DNA. And we did CGH, but unfortunately, impossible to do. No good DNA. Because at the time, people were boiling the skeleton to keep them very white. So and boiling skeleton is not a good idea to conserve DNA. So we went back to the museum and come back with the femur, the true femur, to make an operation to collect DNA there. But in Belgium, like Tintin, we say again, no DNA, caramba, encore raté. And then I called Mr. Pinhasi from Dublin. He's now working in Vienna. Mr. Pinhasi is specialized in studying very old skeleton. And so we took bone here in the petrous part of the temporal bone. And finally, using another methodology, ddPCR that I explained already, where we just use a little quantity of DNA just to compare GPR101 and ZIG3 copies, number of copies, and just trying to be able to show that there were more copies of this one than this one. And finally, we succeeded to show that there was a duplication of GPR101 in this giant. And we published that as a paleogenetic study of ancient DNA with the tallest skeleton available in the world today, having X-lag. So I've been called to Marburg in Germany to study Lange Anton. Lange Anton is 500 years old. He knew Praetorius, a famous musician. But I don't have result for today. Maybe the next time I will give you the X-lag diagnosis of Lange Anton. But I still have important news to give to you about the mechanism of that. So we needed an in vivo model to study the impact of GPR101 on GH secretion and pituitary tumors. How the duplication of GPR101 is producing tallest giant in the world. We don't know. We don't know the function of GPR101. So I asked to my two friends, Dr. Hanson, Julien Hanson, and Diana Aboud, to work on that. And to try to explain by an in vivo model how it is working. So they organized a construct, an additive transgenesis method, with a construct that was composed of a promoter of GHRH receptor, a flag, and GPR101. And after injection in the pronucleus, we could validate the system and see that with DAPI, which colors the nucleus, and flag, that colors this construct, you can see that it has been incorporated. And it's working because GPR101, we don't know ligand to GPR101, but he has a very important spontaneous activity. And in this case, we have important production of cyclic AMP. So it's a demonstration that it's working. The first surprise that we had is that at 6 months or 1 year, the transfected pituitary are exactly the same as the not transfected pituitary, which is important and interesting. You will see why. But the plasma GH is higher, and the plasma prolactin is very higher. So this is good. And when we study that in ex vivo by perfusion test, we see that GH is higher, and if you use stimulation by GHRH, you have an important stimulation of GH, better in the transfected than in the normal. So GPR101 increases the basal tonus of the signaling pathway, and GHRH potentiates the release of GH. This is very important. IGF-1 measures the effect of GH, and it's high in the transfected mouse. You can see here the normal mouse and the transfected. The length is better in the transfected, so she's giant, actually. This is the skeleton with an exaggerated kyphosis here, and a big femur, and we measure the femur, the normal femur, and the one from the transfected, so big femur. And this was confirmed by several measurements. So they are giant, but nevertheless, nothing on the pituitary level that you can see. The in vivo consequences of GH hypersecretion, less white fat, exactly like in acromegalic patients that you can measure here or by CT scan. More lean mass, like in acromegaly, and intolerance to glucose in transfected versus the normal. So exactly what you see in the metabolism of acromegalic patients, but no proliferation. So in conclusion, in the mouse with pituitary GPR101 overexpression, GPR101 drives GH and prolactin secretion. The overexpression of GPR101 does not increase proliferation. In XLAC patient, high GHRH level and high GHRH receptor in the pituitary. The duplication of GPR101 is also present at the hypothalamus level. Of course, it's present everywhere, except in mosaicism. And it may be responsible of the high GHRH level, which in turn induces proliferation in the pituitary level, at the pituitary level. So to have the tallest giant in the world, you need a turbo at the level of the cell, at the pituitary. But if you have only this turbo, you just have an increase in the production of GH, but no proliferation. And the hypothesis is that the proliferation is due to GHRH overproduction from hypothalamus, and GHRH overproduction is due to the duplication of GPR101 at the hypothalamus level. So there is a cooperation between hypothalamus and pituitary to organize this disease. Now some slides, I'm more or less finished, some slides to show you that it's all relative. This is Dr. Daly, 1.85 m with 3 giants. He appears very small, actually, but he's a tall man. This man is 1.75 m, so it's a normal man like me. Among giants, the tallest in the world today, 2.51 m, Sultan Kozen here. And we love giants in Liège. So in my office, I have organized the shadow of Robert Pershing-Wadlow, 2.72 m. So when Dr. Daly is coming, I can say, keep modest, my friend. And I can exercise myself to modesty. These are all the people that I have to thank who participated on my staff. And I thank you for your attention.